Yes, okay, thank you, Janil. So let us continue with where we left yesterday. We were discussing about service roles, right? And today's goal will be covering the service models, right? Or you can say how we divide the services according to the logic, right? Yes, good morning all. So let me just share the slides so that we can begin. Okay, so the initial sender service is the service that starts the transmission, right? Or you can say it is the first web service that initiates the communication, right? Because the communication may take a long time, it may go through multiple services and so on. But which service that starts the communication, that is known as initial sender, fine? Then in the end, the service that is sitting at the ultimate end, right, who is going to actually receive your message and process that, that is called ultimate receiver, fine? So in any web service communication, you can have multiple roles, right? Your service, and one more question that I have for you is, can I say that initial sender is also a requester in one sense? Initial sender is also a requester? Yes, right? Obviously, because you are sending a message, right? Whenever you are sending a message, you are a requester, fine. And correspondingly, we can say that ultimate receiver is a provider, right? In one sense, yes. So that is how the roles are related, fine. Let us continue with this. So in this case, initial sender, right, is also called a service requester, as I said, and ultimate receiver is known as a service provider. Okay, so just to confirm what we discussed. Now, there is a question. Can intermediary services ever be initial senders or ultimate receivers within the scope of service activity? Service activity means you are doing some complex job, right? Yes, I have already started getting answers. That's correct, right? Intermediary services will always be sitting in between, right? So they cannot actually be initial senders or ultimate receivers. Okay, so it's good that you are clear with this concept. Fine. Now, if I give you any example, right, anywhere in the examination or anywhere, if you know the domain, I think you can easily find out its role, right? If I've given you the context, right, in which context your service is working, can you identify the role of that service, right? Given a situation, given a scenario. Yeah, so that kind of practice is required, fine. If you are given the entire description, you just have to find out what is the role that service is playing, right? Because this is mandatory, right? We are, yes, sure. Okay, let me give you an example for, let us say, a service called university administration system, right? We want to design a service oriented solution for our university, right? So assume that you are having a student service, okay, and you are allowed to log in to that student service, okay, using your user ID and password, okay. And suppose you can pay your fees online, right, by contacting the accounting service. Okay, so there is a student service communicating with the accounting service. So find out the roles. Got the scenario, right? Yes. So can you give me the roles of such situation? Student and accounting. There are two services, right? Accounting is managed by login service. Yes, you can say initial sender, correct? Then you will be logging into the, or you can say student service will have the authentication module inside. Then we can also say that, right? Yes, so we'll assume that authentication module is embedded within the student service, right? So yes, student we can say as initial sender in one sense, yes. And what about the account service? What is the role of account service then? Yes. it is going to be provider. Are you fine with that, Janil? Yes. Okay. Okay. So I hope you are satisfied with this kind of example, right? If you are given the situation, you can find the roles, right? Okay. Okay. Good. Fine. Okay. So we'll continue with this now. So I have one more example over here from the textbook, right? Invoice submission. Now, invoice submission service is actually playing two roles, right? It is a requester as well as initial sender. All of you agree to this? You want to submit your bill, right? So you are playing two roles, right? So it is not necessary that you can define only one role for one service, right? It depends upon the context and the position of that service also. If it is the first service in your path, then definitely it is going to be initial sender plus requester. Fine. Similarly, account service is actually the ultimate receiver, right? Because that is where your invoice is going to go. Fine. So it is a provider as well as receiver. Okay, ultimate receiver. And definitely you have a load balancer which will take care that your server does not crash. Sorry. Right. Is this example clear? Right. So we can form any such scenario, right? And we should be able to find out service roles, because see, it is not only about implementation, right? You will be learning implementation of web services. You will be learning implementation of, let us say, RESTful services, or you can say SOAP-based services. But that is a part of programming, right? But we should also know what goes in backend, right? What goes in administration, fine? So that's what we are learning over here, right? If we don't know the concepts, we will not be able to code it correctly. I hope you are following this, right? Okay. So that is why this subject is actually divided in two parts. Okay. Is it fine? Right? Okay. Okay. So let us continue. Next, we have a small topic before we go for that role-based classification, or you can say logic-based classification. Role-based is completed. So that is called as service composition, right? So sometimes if you want to do some complex activity, right? Let us say I gave you the example of the account service. So first of all, the account service will be receiving the invoice, right? And then it processes that, okay? Then it will be updating the ledger, right? And once ledger is updated, right? Before that, you might also have to check the vendor profile, right? So I'll keep on repeating this example because this is useful in multiple situations, right? So remember this example. First we process the bill, then we check the vendor profile, right? Whether it is a correct vendor to whom we are paying. And then once it is confirmed, we make the payment, right? And then finally, we update the database using Ledger service. Okay. So in this case, can I say that we are composing three services for one scenario? Yes. I hope you agree to this. Are we composing multiple services for one scenario? So which service is acting as the point of contact? Which service is acting as a point of contact from outside world in this particular situation? Or which is the first service which will be invoked? Composition member or account? Yes, as per concept, it is composition member, correct. But we can write accounts instead of that. Yes, Shail? Okay. I hope you are clear. Yes. So next step is account service will be going through other services to do the business task, right? You have defined some business rule, right? That is, whenever an invoice is received, you have to first check the vendor profile. If it is valid, then make the payment, right? And finally, you update the ledger, right? That's how we go. That is the flow. Okay. So this is called service composition, right? For doing a complex activity or complex business logic execution, we have to compose multiple services, right? Now, is it possible that I write all four logic in one service instead of doing this? All three logic, sorry, not four. Account, vendor profile, and the third one. Yes? Would you prefer that kind of design? it will become complex, definitely. Another thing is the logic is not called properly partitioned, right? If you do that. Yes. So that is what we have to take care, right? How you divide the logic, that is where SOA comes into picture, right? SOA says that keep your logic as independent as possible. Okay. That is what we are going to learn, right, over here. So you fine with this service composition, right? And the example. Okay. This is the example. Accounts payable service is calling vendor profile, and then you are calling ledger, right? And once everything is found okay, then you will be sending a reply, right? Reply to the invoice service. Okay. So this is known as accounts payable composition, because it is the account service which is composing other services. Okay. Fine. Now let us move to the second part of this topic, service model, or you can say logic based classification, right? So if you divide your services not based on rules but based on its logic, right? So there are some services which are going to be completely customized, or you can say they will be designed in custom manner only for that company, right? And when I say custom, that means you are going to follow business rules of those companies, right? For which you are designing, right? For example, if you are designing account service for our university, the rules will be different. And if you are designing account service for some manufacturing company, the rules will be different. Yes or no? It depends upon the rules, right? Every company follows. Okay. So can I say that that kind of service is called a business service? It is specific to a business, right? Specific to a domain, right? Can I say that it is a business service? Yes. So that is one type of classification known as a business service. You can see that as a second type. Then comes application service, right? Now sometimes business services have to use some other services, right? Some other services, in the sense, to achieve the business rule functionality, you will be composing other services. So that other service might not be purely business oriented. It is a combination of two kinds of logic. One is business logic, plus it can be the application logic. Fine. So that kind of service is known as application service. Fine. It is a combination of two kinds of logic, business as well as the application. Application means your core programming part, right? It will contain your database connection code. It will contain your, you can say, queries and all those things, right? So it is not only focusing on business logic, it is having the core code of your system, right? Actually, application service model is not a model in sense, right? But business service model is a model, right? So next model is controller, right? We have just seen this example, right? So which service is controlling the entire situation? Can you tell me that? Which service is controlling the entire situation? Account, vendor profile, or ledger? Yes. So can I say that account service is a business service plus it is a controller service? I can assign two names, right? No problem with that, right? It is a business service because it is representing the business rules, right? Given by that company. Okay, because the invoice will be processed by the rules defined by the company, right? So that's why it is a business service. Plus, it is controlling the entire situation. Until vendor profile and ledger complete their job, account will not be finishing. Okay, so that's why we can say it is a controller. Last is utility. Utility is something like a generic service, right? So in previous example, right, we have just seen that over here. Can I say that load balancer is a generic service in nature? I can take out this service and place it anywhere in other solutions. It is having a generic interface, yes or no? So this kind of service, which is having reusable logic in the sense, you can use that service either without any modification or with small modification, right? In other solution, right? You don't have to change it completely. Either you can use it as it is, right? Or you can use it with some modification in some other project. So that kind of service is known as a utility service, right? So now let us go in detail of this. Are you clear with the basic idea? Right? How do we divide the services based on logic? Right? Again, we'll take examples, right, in the end. So you will be clear, don't worry. Okay. So within SOA, business service is known as the fundamental building block because it is those rules, right, that we follow. Based on that, your entire enterprise executes. Okay. It is fully autonomous, right? I hope you remember autonomy principle, right? When can we say that service is autonomous? For example, if you are having an invoice service, right? So invoice can be created. You can print all the invoices. You can search any invoice, right? You can delete invoices, right? So if everything is there in the same service, are you getting the point which I'm trying to explain, right? If everything is there as a part of one service, we can say that it is autonomous, right? It has control over its logic. That's correct, right? And it does not have to depend on other services. It does not have to call other service to fetch invoice detail, right? It is itself having the invoice logic. Okay. So this kind of service is called as fully autonomous, right? But is it required that that service will be executing on its own only? Or that means it will not be taking part in compositions? Yes, it is autonomous, true. But is that the case that it will not take part in other situations? It will take part. That's correct, Keval, right? It will take part, right? So that's what this statement says. It is fully autonomous, but it is not limited for execution in isolation, right? It is supposed to take part in compositions. Are you clear with this statement? Right? Which is the example of this service? We have just seen that. If you see this diagram, right? Can you say that account service is a dependent service? It is not autonomous service. Will that be true? Because there are so many messages coming out and messages coming in, right? So based on that, can I say that account service is not an autonomous service? No, right? Because why account service is calling vendor profile? Just for checking the vendor's detail, right? Because it is maintained by vendor detail. Does that mean that my account service becomes dependent on vendor profile? No, right? I hope you are getting the point, right? We are calling other service for just one purpose, right? Does not mean that your service is dependent on it. Getting the point, all of you, right? So please understand this, right? Whenever we are talking about autonomy, autonomy does not mean you are disconnected, right? You will have to communicate with others, right? Whenever there is a need arises, right? So that's what is called as a business service. Business service has two characteristics: autonomous plus wherever required it can compose or it can be composed. I'm saying two things, right? It can compose as well as it can be composed. Are you getting the difference? Yes. It can join with other services as well as it can make other services join with it. Understanding the statement, right? In this example, what is happening? It is composing or it is acting as a member? It is composing. Account service is combining vendor profile and ledger, right? Yes, right? So that is the essence, correct, right? Okay, good. So where do we use business logic? Business services. Business services are used to represent the core business logic. Let us say accounting, invoice management, right? For another example, if I give you, it can be purchase order generation, right? For our university, you can say the salary management module if it is having a service, right? So salary is paid based on the rule. Can I say that it is a business service? Right? Salary processing service, if you have such a service, right? Yes or no? Can I say that it is going to follow rules? If yes, then definitely it is a business service. Okay. As well as business service can act as a composition member. Okay. It can be joining others for other scenarios. Okay. Fine. Are you clear with business service model? Can we move forward? Yes. Okay, so let us continue with the next part. Utility service model. Utility means it will be something which is going to be more useful, right? In other words, it will not be specific, right? So any service that offers reusable logic. As I said, reusable logic can be something which you can use as it is anywhere, or you can slightly modify it, right, and use it. Okay, you don't have to completely rewrite that service. Okay, so that kind of logic is known as reusable logic. Yes or no? Which programming language or which programming tries to focus on reusability? Which style of programming, in other words? Yes, load balancer is the example, correct? But which style of programming? Yes, that's correct. OOP. In OOP, we always try to make our code reusable, right? So in essence, every service is reusable, right? If you are using OOP, but if you are following custom rules inside, then it becomes a business service. Yes, are you getting the difference? Yeah. Okay, so that is the concept. Now one more term we are having, this is a popular term in SOA. This category is indebted for the classification of solution agnostic services, right? Solution agnostic, now what do you mean by that, right? So solution agnostic means it is independent of the solution, right? Can you just give me the English meaning of agnostic? Agnostic, yes, Janil, I'll explain that. Agnostic means what? Agnostic has multiple, you can say, interpretations. One of the interpretation is it is independent, right? Or not known, you can also say in one sense, right? So if I'm designing a service without taking into consideration what is my domain, right? For example, load balancer. Are you going to think about the domain when you design a load balancer service? No, right? So it is independent of the business logic, independent of the solution or enterprise that you are following, right? So that is called a, let us say, utility service model or utility service. Are you clear with this definition at least? Yes? Okay, good. We'll see some examples in the end after we finish with this, okay? So let us continue with this. First, what is the application? Let us cover that. Utility services are used in which situations? So the first is they are used as services that enable reuse, obviously, right? It has to have reuse characteristic, right? It is a solution agnostic intermediary service, right? Now, if you just look at this statement, can I fit load balancer in this category, second category? Independent of solution and it is intermediary. Yes or no? I hope you are getting the point, right? So load balancer is actually the example of this second category or second application. Fine. These are the applications of your utility services. Okay. Third is as services that promote interoperability, right? Suppose you want to join a legacy application with your new architecture, right? So as we discussed yesterday, wherever you want to expose legacy logic, first of all, you have to write an adapter, right? So whatever calls you will be making, right? Whatever calls you will be making to that legacy has to go through that adapter service. Okay. So what that adapter service will do, can anyone tell me? what that adapter service will be doing in general? Yes, your legacy service will be talking in terms of, let us say, functions or in terms of objects, but we have to convert that into XML. Yes or no? We have to convert that into XML so that everyone can understand outside the world. Are you getting this? Right? So we have to translate every call that is coming into or going out into XML. Right? So that kind of service that I'll be writing, okay, that converts the incoming messages into XML and outgoing messages into XML. Can I say that it is again going to be a reusable logic? I can use it for multiple legacy applications. Yes or no? With small modification. With small modification. Yes, right? So can I say that we are satisfying interoperability in this situation? Interoperability, that means you are able to talk between different platforms, different technologies. Yes or no? Are you able to understand this situation? Number 3, right? Edge services that promote interoperability within SOA. I already gave you the example, right? Yes, you can say federation also. Yes. In one sense, it is federation, right? You are combining multiple applications together, legacy 1 to legacy 2 or legacy 1 to new. There are two possibilities, right? Yes, Harsh? Are we connecting legacy 1 to legacy 2? That is one option. Or you are connecting legacy 1 with a service that is designed with new technologies. Okay. Ultimately, our goal is interoperability, right? And the code that we write will be generally reusable, right? So that kind of service we can make, or we can consider as utility service. Okay. Last one. As the services with highest degree of autonomy. So why such services having highest degree of autonomy? Can anyone tell me? For example, load balancer. Why is it having complete autonomy or highest degree of autonomy? Because it is independent of solution. Correct. Very correct. Others understood? Yes, yes, correct, Janil, right? Doesn't require other services. So it is completely independent, right? You can imagine that is serving as a totally in isolation, right? So that's why, just remember this one point for theory. Utility services have highest amount of autonomy. That is a true statement. Yes or no? Utility service has highest amount of autonomy. Clear? Yes, you can say standalone application. That's right, Shail. Right? Okay, so clear with this second model? Utility service model? Right, right. Okay. Let us jump into the third one, right? But before that, some exercise, right? Accounts payable. We all can classify this, right? It is a business service. Agreed? Okay. Now, this is the tricky one. Internal policy. Internal policy, right? Suppose you are designing a policy service that defines the rules that the company has to follow. Okay, it is a, you can say, rule management service. Wherever you require a rule, you visit that service. Okay, so it is not defining rule for a specific situation or for any specific scenario. It is defining all the rules. Okay, so under which category you will classify? Business or utility? Or it is more towards what? More of a business service or more of a utility service? It's fine if you give incorrect answer, right? At least try. More of utility, yes. That's what I said. That's why I gave you the hint, right? Correct. Yes, Janil and Shail. So why it is utility? Because see, it is defining all the rules. Okay. So it is not defining rules for any specific situation. If it was defining rule for specific situation, we can say that it is a business service. Getting the point? Right? Okay. So that is why we say that internal policy can be more of classified as, you can say, utility service, right? Because it is possible that same company, whenever it wants another solution to be designed, right? You have the same customer requesting you another solution, right? Or another project. Can you reuse this internal policy service for that another project? Yes, right? Because it is defining every rule, right? So I can definitely use that service as a part of another project for the same company. But I cannot use this service for other company. Yes. Yes, Harsh. Right? That's correct. Fine. So, but for this company, it is representing a reusable logic, right? So that's why we can say that it is more of utility service. Clear? Okay, let us think about others. Invoice. This is easy. Invoice. Invoice has to follow specific business rules, remember, right? Because see, depending upon the client, you have to send the invoice. No, your invoice generation rules are fixed. Are you following, Harsh? You will have the same GST number. You will have the same structure of the bill generation, right? Okay. And is that structure going to be same with other companies? Whatever format that you are generating, is that going to be same? No, right? So that's why, can I say it is a pure business service? Pure business service? Yes, correct. Right. Ledger. Where will you classify ledger service? Ledger again maintains the database, right? But if you say that that database is supposed to be maintained by following certain business rules, then what will be the answer? Remember, we need to know the details, right? Harsh, would you like to change the answer? Yes, right? So if you are updating the records based on rule, that is, if the let us say invoice status is yes and this client is a regular client, then only you store the data. Are you getting the situation? Okay. If this client is our regular client, then only we maintain the data. Then it is a business service. Otherwise, you can call it as a utility service, right? So it depends upon the context, right? Load balancer, we all know, right? Utility. I'm not going in detail. Order management, order fulfillment, and purchase order, and vendor profile. All three we can classify in one category. Because vendor profile is also specific, right? It is specific for a particular company, right? Because the database of vendors will be different for every company, and the rules by which you maintain that data is also different. So all three pertain to business category. Clear? Right? Okay, so I think we have had enough examples, right? Wherever you find any service name, you just think how it fits your solution, right? Is it fitting according to rules of your company? Then it is a business service, right? Otherwise, there is a chance that it can be utility service. Okay, clear? It is a simple if else that you have to check. Okay, fine. So this all goes, yes, we have to see the company scope. Yes, that's correct, Harsh. Because if you are following specific company rules, definitely you are bound to be business service, right? Okay. Yes. Okay, let us now go for the last model. This is simpler to understand. Controller service is something which composes the others, right? So we have already seen the example, right? Account service is a controller service, sorry, right? So where do we use control services? Wherever we want to have composability principle. Composability says that depending upon situation, combine multiple services, right? Don't keep them connected forever, right? Wherever required, connect those services. Because if we keep them connected forever, we will be violating one principle, which is that if you keep connected to that service, you will be violating loose coupling. Correct. Very good, right? Controller service also is used for leveraging, or you can say for achieving reusability, right? So wherever accounting operation is required, I can use account service, right? Okay, so there is a slight amount of reuse, okay, in composing. I'm not saying it is a purely reusable service, right? Okay. To support autonomy in other services, right? So we are not remaining connected with other services throughout. Wherever required, we will connect, okay? And due to that, your service will be mostly independent. Yes or no? Your service will be mostly independent, right? So that is why we will be able to achieve autonomy. Fine. So in the structure, you can have a master controller service and a subcontroller service. If you are having a complex scenario, then you can have two levels of controller. One can be master controller, the other can be subcontroller. Let us look at that. So you can see this. There is a master controller service, and then it is composing other business services, right? And in the end, it is also having a subcontroller service that is also combining multiple services. So this is a complex business scenario. Are you clear with this diagram? Right? So the nesting depth can be up to anything, right? It depends upon how complex the situation that you are handling, right? And it all depends upon your requirements, right? So everywhere software engineering is present, right? Okay. So in the summary, we can give this as an example. Accounts payable is is containing two types of logic. It is a controller as well as it is a business service, right? Vendor profile, we know it is a pure business service because we are maintaining the vendor details as per rules of this company, right? That's why it is a business service. Ledger is also business because it is following rules of company X, right? So are you clear with this slide, right? This is how you should be able to classify. Given the scenario, you should be able to give the service model name, okay? And a service can belong to more than one service model, okay? So this is the summary. I have already uploaded this slide. You can just go through it, right? Temporary classification relate to the roles at runtime, okay? And roles can change as we have seen. Permanent classification is decided based on the logic, okay? And the last statement, a service can belong to more than one service model. Are you clear with this statement? What is the example that makes this statement true? Account. Yes, we have just seen that, right? It is belonging to two models, right? Business and controller. Okay. So now we are moving towards an important part of this chapter, right? Before you start studying web service design, you should know this, right? What is WSDL and what is the content of WSDL, right? I'll be covering the theoretical concept and sir will tell you the details, technical details, right? So that's how the planning is made, right? So that you are clear with both the aspects. Okay. So why do we need description? The first point is to make sure that our services are loosely coupled. Because if you are connected to your provider always, then you will be having a tightly coupled solution, right? Instead of that, you first download the WSDL file from a repository and then you call that service. And that is how we have loose coupling. Clear with the first point? Okay. What is the second point? Description document are required for any service wanting to act as ultimate receiver. Do you agree with this? If you are ultimate receiver, you have to publish your description, right? Why? Because you will be provider also, right? And what is the role for a provider? It has to publish its description, right? So otherwise it will become tightly coupled. Yes, that's correct. See, if you don't have, let us say, if you don't publish your description, right? Then first of all, what you have to do? Service A has to talk with service B that give me the service description. Are you getting this, Shail? So you are talking for service description, and then you will talk again for your requirement. So can I say that you are increasing the coupling, right? Yes, right. So that is what we don't want. We want a decoupled communication. Okay, so that is where descriptions become important. Okay, so if someone asks you anywhere in exam or the interviews, why do we need to describe services? Right. So these are the 2 points. Okay, fine. This is the example. You can just go through it. Service A, right? Wherever service A wants to call service B, okay, it has to send the message. But that message should follow rules of which service, or should follow the description of which service? Yes, whenever service A sends a message to service B, the SOAP message or the XML contents that you will be writing will be based on the rules of WSDL of service B. Yes, right? Same way, I can say in reverse, whenever service B is sending a reply, you have to know, right? What are the methods on service A side, right? So that is based on the WSDL of service A. Okay? Getting the idea, right? So this is the actual application, right? This is how the services communicate. Okay. And this is how we maintain loose coupling. Fine. Okay. Complete example. You can just observe this slide once. Invoice submission, right? Invoice has to submit the invoice to accounts service. So I must have the account service WSDL. Okay. I have not kept the repository by intention, because still we have not covered that topic. We have not seen how the descriptions are stored in a repository. I'm going to cover that once we are done with WSDL. Okay. So assume that repository is present. Okay. Then comes, whenever purchase order is submitted, it is based on the WSDL of order service. Okay. So this is the real world example of what we have seen in theory. Fine. Before we go into WSDL details, yes, it should be global or local. Yes, it can be local or global both, Shail. We'll see both the types, right? Okay, so it is possible that you can design a proprietary service-oriented solution. So whoever wants to connect, they have to pay, right? If that is the case, then you can say it is a local repository, right? Otherwise, something like a weather service, you can say it is a global service, right? So there are 2 types, yes, right? We'll see that. What is a legacy adapter? Yes, we have just discussed that around 10 minutes ago. Remember that? Whenever we want to connect to legacy application, what kind of code we have to write in that service? We have to write the data conversion kind of logic, right? So either you have to convert XML to object format, or XML to individual parameter format, right? Or object to XML, right? Ultimately, it is a kind of adapter. That's correct, right? So legacy system adapter is something which will read data from legacy system, right? It will convert that into XML or any other generalized format, and it will transfer that data to the new application, vice versa. Yes, clear? So this is called as a legacy system adapter, right? One sideline point before we go into WSDL. What is WSDL? What is the full form? Web Service Description Language, right? It describes the web service. So what does it contain? It contains the method signatures, it contains the parameter data types, everything. Okay, we'll see that in detail. Yes, in short, you can say service information. Correct, right? UDDI. This will be covering after WSDL is over. It is known as Universal Description Discovery and Integration. That is the full form, right? So what do you think it is? We have just discussed that 2 minutes ago. It is a repository, right, where descriptions are maintained, right? Are you getting the idea? We'll see that in detail. Okay, just understand the full form. It is a discovery mechanism for descriptions. It is a discovery mechanism for descriptions. Getting the essence at least, right? Okay, so these are some keywords of SOA. You should know the full form. Like you all know full form of SRS, right? Software Requirement Specification. Similarly, you should know what is WSDL full form. You should know what is UDDI full form. You should know what is SOAP, right? So these are the keywords of SOA. Okay, fine. If you want to achieve quality in the service, right, we have seen it requires security, it requires reliability, right? So this, I'm just trying to revise before we go into the WSDL. So if you want your service to be reliable, you need to expose your operations in a standard manner. If you want security, there should be security enforced in the service, right? Then only we can say that quality is enforced. Okay. Now let us go into WSDL. Let me first show you the structure, then we'll come back. This is how the WSDL file is designed, right? If you talk in terms of XML, how many elements you can see? XML has elements, right? So how many elements you can see? There are total 6 elements, right? 6 basic elements. The first is port type. Port type is a parent of operation element. I hope you know that convention, right? You have studied XML, isn't it? Parent and child. Yes. XML is a tree structure, right? So first is port type. Port type is a root element, right? Then comes operation element, okay? And then comes the message element, okay? And this entire thing, port type, operation, and message, is a part of abstract element, abstract description element, okay? Then the second part of WSDL file is containing concrete description element. Inside that you are having binding, then you have port, and then you have service, right? I'll describe you what are these elements, right, in detail. But try to understand that this is a complex document, isn't it? Right? It has a number of XML elements, and that is why you have studied XML first. So that whenever you create a web service, that web service is going to give you the WSDL file. Okay, so you should be able to interpret that, right? You should be able to read how the elements are there stored inside. Okay, fine. So let us start with the details. WSDL describes point of contact, right, for a provider. That means if a requester wants to connect to the provider, the first thing you need is a WSDL. Okay. It provides formal definition of the interface. Generally, in object-oriented programming, we write the interface. What is the purpose of writing interface? Let us talk for some time related to programming. What is the requirement of interface? Yes. Why do we create an interface? Why don't we just talk with class directly, right? Either in C# or yes, dependency injection is a good application to share functionality globally, correct? What is the essence? Yes, abstraction, right? We want to hide the logic. I hope all of you will agree to this, right? So basically, we just want to expose the details of my service outside, right? I don't want to expose its code, right? Because if I'm going to expose the code, then it will not be interoperable. Plus, you are violating abstraction principle. Okay, so WSDL only provides you the formal definition what the service contains, right? So based on that, requester can know two things. One thing is how to send the request, that is called how to structure the request message, because everything happens in form of messages, right? So how will you send your request message, that you will be able to know by looking at the WSDL. Second, an important thing, where to send, right? So I should know the URL, isn't it? Whenever I'm talking with a service, I should know the URL of that service, right? So that is a part of the WSDL file. Okay. So for that, we divide the WSDL in two parts, right? You can say that these two are the first level elements of your WSDL file, first level, right? I hope you know the tree structure, right? Okay. So abstract description is the first part and concrete. There is a reason behind the naming convention. Abstract means you are hiding the protocol details. Abstract description's goal is to just expose what are the functions in my service and what are the parameter types, parameter data types. That is what it is going to describe. It is not going to show you which protocol you are using. Either you are using SOAP protocol or HTTP or any other, right? So definitely where that will be written, protocol information. Yes, it's easy to guess. If you are just showing your method signatures in abstract part, then where you will be writing the actual connection information? In the concrete part, obviously, right? In the concrete part, right? So that is why wherever you access a WSDL file, what you will be looking into first? Abstract part or concrete part? You will first look into abstract part, right? Because you would like to know how many methods are there, what are the parameters of the methods, right? Or what are the types of those parameters, yes or no, right? And once you feel that this is good service for me, then you will look into the concrete, that which protocol it supports and where the service is located. Are you getting the context that I'm trying to describe, right? So WSDL is read in this way. First, you access the abstract part. If you are satisfied with the abstract part, then only you consult the concrete part. That is why WSDL is divided in two parts. Getting this concept, all of you? We'll go in detail. Don't worry, right? I'm just giving you the overview, right? Yes, yes. Okay. So we have already seen this diagram. Now let us go into detail of abstract description. Okay. So as I said, you should know which are the methods supported, right? So where you see the method in abstract, where you see the methods, yes, it is part of your operation, isn't it? It is part of your operation, yes. And every operation can access a number of parameters, right? So basically, if I say in terms of message, every operation can support two types of messages: a request message and a response message. I'll repeat. Every operation can contain a request message. Let us say if I'm defining an operation, submit invoice, right? Submit invoice. So what will be the request message for this? Request message will take one PDF file. That will be your invoice. Yes or no? Request message will accept one PDF file as an attachment, let us say, right? And what will be the response message containing? Acknowledgement, right? Once you receive the response, you will be sending acknowledgement, right? So can I say that this is just like your method signature? You write your method like this: return type, right? Then method name, and then parameters. Can you map that concept over here? Programming concept, right? So return type will be nothing but what? Your response message, right? Parameter will be nothing but what? Request message. Okay. And where do they belong? Where both the things belong? Yes, in a operation. Correct. Understood. Understood this or not? Right? Okay. Now we have to group all the operations together, like class combines all the operations. So all the operations are grouped as a part of interface or port type. That is the parent element. Are you getting? Right? All the operations or methods are grouped as a interface. In newer version of WSDL, it is known as interface. In older version, it was known as port type. So you should know both the names. Clear? So now I'll just give you further detail. Interface is a collection of operations. An operation is a set of messages or collection of messages. Is that understood? Right? So now let us look at the definitions. You have understood the concept, so it will be very easy for you to go through the definitions, right? Because as we are studying the theory concepts, you should know the terms, right? So abstract description establishes the interface characteristic, right? So it basically exposes your interface, in other words, right? Without reference to the technology. This is important, because if I'm exposing what technology I'm using, will my service be interoperable? Can I talk between different platforms if I'm exposing technical details outside or the platform details outside? Yes or no? If you are saying that my service is written in .NET, right? Let us say it is in REST API technology or it is in SOAP based service, right? So will that be correct to do that? Yes, abstraction won't be achieved, right? So that is why what we should show just signatures and message types. That's it, right? So that is why abstract part contains only 3 elements. The first is port type, second is operation, third is message, right? So what is port type? Port type actually is defined as the second term. You can see that in double quotes. It sorts the messages a service can process into a group of functions known as operation. So basically, I can also say in other words, it is a collection of operations, and operations contain messages. Getting it? Right? We have just seen that, right? In the actual diagram. Right? Understood, all of you? Right? Yes. So it defines the high level view of your interface. Why high level? Because we are not exposing the technical details. We are not exposing even the protocol information. Which protocol this service supports, where is the location of the service, that is also not exposed. Okay, who will describe that? Who will describe the yes, concrete part, correct, right, correct. What is operation? We all know this, right? Let us go through the definition. Operation is nothing but a specific action performed by the service. It is a method basically, right? You can compare an operation to a public method, right? Ideally, the methods that you will be declaring should be of access specifier public, isn't it? Because if you make it private or even protected, then you might not be able to share them properly, right? So you can relate this with programming, right, as well. So you can compare your operations with your public methods, right? And as the methods contain parameters, at the method contain parameter, the operations contain input and output messages. Input and output messages, right? So it is a similar analogy, right? That's what we can say. Clear with this part? Yes? Okay, okay. Let us cover the next portion, message. As I said, every operation takes input parameters and it can respond with output parameters, right? So the input parameters are represented in form of messages, right? Input parameter will be represented by which kind of message? Request message or response message? Request message, correct. And the output parameter will be represented with response message, right? So wherever you will start designing web services in lab, you will actually realize how this is done. And whenever we'll take up the lab, I'll again revise this, right? So that you can relate the theory with the practical, right? So that's how you'll be able to relate. Okay, so are you clear with the abstract portion of your code? Yes, abstract portion of the WSDL. We'll cover the concrete part next time, right? It's already the time, so I'm stopping over here. Okay, so thank you. Let us end this session over here. Have a good day ahead.